What is the most satisfying pain you felt? Write in the comments what you think about this. Enjoy the show. Story 1. I fractured my fingertip after the shelf from a cabinet fell on it. The pressure from the blood building up was starting to give that annoying pain feeling. Went to a clinic shortly after and they burned the top of the nail to let the blood flow out. The heated wire mixed with the pressure under my nail was extremely painful for a split second. And then it just gave way to a good feeling like finally being able to scratch that itch that's been bothering you. Story 2. Hot gunpowder scratched up my face after I fired an Appalachian, a heavy recoilless anti-tank weapon, in the Army. So it fires a 112 mm heat shell. So it's essentially like shoulder-firing heavy artillery, just without recoil. It's so powerful that it has a built-in face cover and earplugs because the blast when firing is so large that debris and gunpowder will go flying all around you, and the sound is loud enough to kill you, 170-some decibels. So I didn't press my face to the cover properly, and I ended up with some gunpowder burning my face and leaving little cuts. It hurt a bit, and I looked like I got jumped, but I totally nailed that T-55 from 300 meters away dead in the center. Holy shit, did it feel good. Story 3 got my sinuses exploded with a balloon about a month ago. Not pain so much, but so much pressure and then relief, and that first breath through my nose felt like I was providing AC to my fucking brain. Lamau! Story 4 years ago, I went ATV riding in shorts through a field of tall grass and got covered in chiggers, from the knee down on both legs. I will bet that I had between 40 and 50 spots the size of nickels, all of them whelped up to the thickness of at least a nickel. The itching was unimaginable and never-ending. After the third day, I ran a 5-gallon bucket about 3/4 full of extremely hot water and mixed in bleach and Epsom salts, and just submerged my feet up to the knees in that bucket. The pain was excruciating but also satisfying in a way I can't explain. The bleach worked. As I understand it, chiggers lay eggs under your skin and the whelps are their babies eating their way out. And though I lost all tan and hair on my legs, there was finally sweet relief and I was able to sleep for the first time in days. Story 5, I found out that you can get rid of the itch on most things by making it really hot. One way we do this is get the shower as hot as possible, then use the wand attachment to really fry those spots. Anyway, I got poison ivy and used this method. The pain was exquisite. That's the only word to describe it. It really does work, BTW. It relieves the itching of poison ivy for about 12 hours. Story 6. Threading my eyebrows. I learned how to do it in jail and I like the feeling better than a tattoo. Now I'm always kind of happy to have my eyebrows grow in so I can thread them. I don't even like to pluck them because they don't give me the same feeling as threading. Story 7. Had a sports massage in Thailand, an actual massage. Tiny lady was so small she was able to use both her forearms to knead my traps. She found a massive knot and slowly but firmly teased it out. Hard sensation to describe. I felt a big pop and a load of fibers straightening out. Gained so much mobility I didn't realize I had lost. Story 8. When the massage therapist discovered the large group of knots in my calf that seemed to be the main cause of my plantar fasciitis. It was so painful as he worked them out, but the relief was so good. It took a few sessions to get rid of them fully and got less painful each time. Thankfully, after that and a little more stretching, my plantar fasciitis was gone and hasn't came back in over 2 years. Story 9. Getting a sports massage from a real pro with stupidly strong hands 3 months after ACL surgery. He was standing on the table with his elbows dug into thighs and calves from behind. It was the closest I've VWR come to screaming and or crying in public, but it was the most blissful release of my life. I literally had to adjust how I walked in the injury because it healed so weak over the next few days. Highly recommend, but you probably don't need the ACL surgery first. Story 10. One day at work, my big toenail got slightly infected because I cut it too short or something, and it started hurting so bad that I couldn't think. Thankfully, after 2 hours, we had a moment where there weren't any customers, so I jammed my thumbnail to the side of the toenail and pulled to the side until a little bit of pus came out. It hurt so bad, but it hurt so good in that moment, and then it was fine for the rest of the shift. Story 11. I had chronic pain for over 2 years, constantly in agony from some kind of nerve trapped in my upper right thigh, the entire leg, my hip, and back. It was very similar to sciatica, but a different nerve. I would cry driving to and from work every day. I didn't drive myself anywhere unless I absolutely had to. I have been friends with a guy on the opposite side of the country from me for a few years, and he had a practice as a sort of massage therapist, but specialized in nerve release techniques. He was going to be slightly closer to me visiting friends, closer being about a 6-hour drive, which would be a nightmare with the pain, but he swore 100% he could fix it if I came and met him. He worked me over thoroughly, and it hurt so bad I was trying not to scream. Wasn't the worst pain I'd ever been in. My pain tolerance is incredibly high, but when he was done, the pain was gone. Absolutely gone. And it hasn't come back in the 2 years since. The man is a fucking miracle worker. Story 12, mild plantar fasciitis. When it gets severe, it hurts like buggery and walking is difficult. But when it's in a mild phase, it's just like this feeling in the heel of your foot that's always there as you walk, is definitely pain, but not severe enough to really stop you from doing anything. There are definitely times when it's an enjoyable pain, and it goes on at the same level for a long time. Story 13. I got 3 subdermal anchors in the back of my neck. These are piercings where they remove a bit of flesh with a dermal punch and install a metal implant. It's a tab with a threaded post where you add the jewelry and little holes for your flesh to grow through the tab and hold it in place. I had taken 2 tabs of acid when my friend asked me if I want to accompany her to the piercing shop. She was a nurse and I knew she would find a super reputable place, so my dumb ass decided to get the most intense piercing available on the spur of the moment. Craziest sensation I ever felt in my life, and I fucking loved it. Would not recommend unless you are extremely experienced with both piercings and drugs, but goddamn, I would do it again in a heartbeat. Story 14. I was holding in the gas during my colonoscopy as I was shy, and I felt the pressure building as they kept going. It got to a point where I felt I would explode, but it was a weird sensation like you are pooping and you need to let it go or something will blow. All 3 doctors started shouting at me to just let go, as they could see me visibly in agony, and I did. I can't explain it any better than that. I was just immensely relieved. Get sedated if you ever get one. You'll just have long-ass farts when you wake up. Story 15. When I knew I was giving my horrible abusive ex the last kiss. When I knew I'd played out his sick game and finally won and I was getting away, and he wanted a kiss thinking he was seeing me the next week. I kissed him knowing that was the last time I'd have his nasty lips near me. Left and never looked back. Was painful and a horrible situation, but so good. Story 16. Last year I had knee surgery that resulted in a pretty big cut on the side of my leg. They closed it with 30 of those metal staples. After about a week and a half, they started to hurt because a few got infected. I went back to the hospital, and when the nurse removed them, it hurt like hell. But I was so happy because in a moment all the pressure was gone. Story 17. A deep wart on my foot. I tried everything on and wouldn't go away. The doctor froze it with a nitrogen tip a couple times, and a hole opened up a week later with the wart standing exposed in the middle by itself. Grabbed it with needle nose pliers. The pain made it hard to maintain my grip, and every time I pulled it would slip. Finally got angry enough that I squeezed so hard my brain gave up on being careful, and I felt it rip off the flesh as I pulled slowly. The pain was awful, but also so satisfying because I could feel it detaching off my body. Story 18. When you take a shit in the last moment, before that stomach went wild. Hard day work at the field or something related to farming, and you get home and lay down in bed. Nothing beats the feeling when you work hard on something and when you look back you can see the progress. Wouldn't call it a pain, but after coming you keep getting that masturbation/penetration/BJ moves. Exorcism right there if you ask me. Story 19. It was 4 years ago. Christmas dinner with the family. Kids are running all around, not really listening. All hopped up on sugar as kids do. I'm in the kitchen with a big pot of water on boil for mashed potatoes. Only burner that would fit it was the very front burner. My kid, 4 at the time, runs into the kitchen and bumps into my wife, who then bumps into the stove, knocking the pot loose towards my now fallen on her ass daughter. Without thinking, I jumped right in front of that pot and took damn near the full splash of that hot, not yet boiling but still hot as fuck water. My wife scooped up my daughter, and only a couple of drops hit her and my wife. I had 1st and 2nd degree burns from pretty much my belly button down. The pain I felt was extreme, but to know I protected my child and wife from that pain was the most satisfying thing I've ever felt in my life. Story 20. For years I'd have said it was my broken knuckle in late February of 1980, from knocking out the molar, dislocating and breaking the jaw of the bully who had been picking on me verbally and physically for over half the school year. The teachers repeatedly told me to just ignore them and they would stop, which to be fair, I'm sure they'd have eventually gotten bored of it. But no, it has to be the terrible ache in my arm and neck from holding my colicky baby for hours, because I found the only angle she was comfortable enough to sleep in so my wife could too. Story 21. I had a pimple on my temple. I'd play with it when I got nervous. Then I'd get self-conscious about it. One day it started itching really bad, so I used a one-person bathroom. Cleaned it with some towelettes and started to press on it really, really hard. Hurt so bad to push on it that I closed my eyes around which time I heard 6 pops and instant relief. Felt like molten steel was being pulled through a pore. Opened my eyes and the mirror was absolutely disgusting, covered in pus and blood. Could see what looked like 4 cores of it that had been subsequently pushed down when I'd tried to pop it before. Cleaned up the mirror and touched it. Still felt a little hot and there was still some pain. Decided F it, I'm already here. Squeezed it again and heard 3 more pops. The after sensation was like my brain was a fist that had been clenched for days. My whole face and brain just relaxed. Cleaned up the mirror again, washed my hands and sat in the restroom for about 10 more minutes for the inflammation to go down where I'd pushed on it so hard. Still one of the most painfully orgasmic sensations ever. Was like 20 years of stress just lifted from my shoulders. Story 22. Giving birth. The contractions, the pain from pushing his head out, then his shoulders, the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. But once the shoulders pop out, the rest of the body slides out and the pain is immediately gone, followed by the biggest rush of oxytocin a woman will ever have. Story 23. Living alone. Got constipated. Tried everything to relieve it. Almost fainted. Called ambulance. Vitals okay, though my ass was going to split. Started breathing like in labor woman. Deep breaths. Standing upright over toilet. The pain was unbestable. My ass hurt. It wanted to come out but couldn't fit. Kept hurting, wanted to come out. Almost crying. Almost passing out. Gave one last little push. I could feel the log move. Deep breath, moved more. OMG, mommy, help me. Moved a little more. Almost passing out. Yelled, screamed, then it became its painfulest slide. It found air. The pain. Then the release. Covered in sweat. Ass hurt so much. Checked for bleeding. A little. Paramedic checked me over. Most painful shit of my life. Please don't get constipated. Paramedics told me they get many such calls. Story 24. I had an infected tooth recently that was really unbelievably painful. I decided to have it pulled. I always get minimal Novocaine for dental procedures, so I tend to feel just a little bit LOL. So, after my dentist pulled the tooth, he scraped out inside of my gums, and although painful, it was so freaking relieving and satisfying. It was like scratching the deepest itch. Story 25. I had COVID in Italy and my throat felt like it was being burned with a torch. I couldn't get any relief with over-the-counter medicine and I was almost panicking from the pain. But then, I accidentally violently smashed my shin against a scooter foot peg and the pain of that dropped me to my knees on the cobblestone street. But, after about 30 seconds, I didn't feel my shin or my throat anymore and the relief lasted most of the day. So now whenever I have a really sore back or throat, etc., I just go punt a motorcycle foot peg and voila. Story 26. I had a metal splinter in my foot. It was coming out when I pulled on it like a regular splinter. It took some force and pulling through the increasing pain. When it did come out, I noticed the end of it was bent, like an L, so that's why it hurt so much to pull it out. Felt great after though, that and biting or salting a canker sore in my mouth. Story 27. At the age of 12, I was hit by a van while walking down the street. Among many injuries was a broken fibula. Broke it in 2 places and had to have 5 large pins in the side of my leg for quite some time. The sensation of the doctor unscrewing these bone screws. Can't describe it, but it's easily my most satisfying pain. Story 28. It wasn't my pain, but the pain of school bully who provided the most satisfying pain. He was hard to catch when he was causing trouble for me or others, but one day, the principal caught up with his trouble, and the school bully couldn't sit down for a few well-deserved days. Naturally, the bully's parents believed he was the one being bullied. I always believe in parents publicly sticking up for their kids, but surely they have known the truth about their kid for as long as bullies have gotten in trouble at school. Story 29. This is niche, but when you have a wound, receiving wound care and dressings and they remove the dressing and clean the wound. It is excruciating to the actual wound cleaned, but at the same time, the skin around it is so angry with the dressing that having the bandages off and the irritated skin cleaned and dried is euphoric at the same time. Story 30. Not technically pain, I guess, but discomfort when you're feeling so nauseous, like the head-spinning nausea when you're either ill or car sick, and then you finally throw up and the nausea leaves all at once. One time I was getting really car sick as a teenager, and thankfully my parents had a bucket because they couldn't pull over at the time. The nausea felt like it was lasting forever. Even the feeling in my mouth that you get right before you puke was just there for what felt like ages. Eventually my stomach let loose, and I remember afterwards I just sat back in the seat in pure euphoria. Maybe even laughing, feeling the best. Story 31. I had a plantar wart on the bottom of my foot when I was 14. Every time I walked, all the blood in my body would rush to it and it would hurt like a bitch. After weeks of trying useless medicines, I ended up super gluing a Band-Aid to it and my mother kindly ripped the fucker out. Blood everywhere and a nice hole in my foot, but my God, the satisfaction 10/10. Story 32. I had a cyst on the back of my ear for a couple years, about the size of a pea. I once was able to pop it like a zit and thought that was it. It grew back, was there for another 2 years and hardened. Asked my doc about it and he said, "Meh, it's not that big, just deal with it." I spent a couple of weeks squeezing it, scratching it, poking it with needle, everything. The skin around it was scabbed and raw. One day I'm driving my work truck and give it a nice squeeze and it felt like popping a mini edamame bean out of the shell. Wasn't that painful, but damn it felt good. The thing came out and it was literally a little BB with a hard layer on the outside and goo on the inside. There was a lining of the cyst hanging out of my ear that I had to rip out in order for the cyst to not form again. Was amazing. I have a photo of the hardened puss ball BB thing too, if anyone wants to see LOLA. Story 33. This isn't really satisfying pain, however it's close enough. This might make me out to be a lunatic, but whatever. I used to ride my bike down the hill on my street. One time I wanted to see if I could ride down without using my brakes. I think it's obvious how that turned out. If it wasn't for my helmet, I would have had a concussion. I remember laying on the pavement, my knees scratched up and probably bleeding. I was in shock for a good minute or so. Then I started to laugh, picked up my bike and hauled it home, still laughing. I think I was 11. However, if I were to give you a proper answer, it would be the moment after a Charlie horse goes away. Oh my God, Dad. Story 34. Had a cystic zit in my ear. Couldn't get in to see an ENT. It felt like someone had jammed a knife into the side of my head. I finally couldn't take it anymore. I got out my travel-sized nail file, sterilized it in alcohol, heated it up over a flame, and placed it onto the swollen area. Forced the zit to pop and pus oozed out of my ear. Was absolute agony for 4 seconds. But then the pain I'd been experiencing for 8 days was gone. Story 35. I had very large thrombosed hemorrhoids that caused a lump in my perineum between my lady bits and back end. It was so large it hurt to sit, walk, and pain shot down my leg and all over my butt cheek. I went to the doctor super concerned it was my endo. Turns out they were stage 4 thrombosed hemorrhoids, aka hemorrhoids that turn into large blood clots that develop in your butt and just get stuck, causing tons of pain. They were caused from the straining from lifting weights and cycling with heavy exercise and a nice dose of IBS. When I went to the proctologist, he said, a lot of his patients are athletes, even triathletes, and it's super common for them to develop them. I'm not an athlete, but I work out and am on a fitness journey, so I push myself to the next level constantly. Well, he had to remove the hemorrhoids with a needle doing something called sclerotherapy. I felt the first injection immediately, and my butt stung like a bee had stung me on the inside. But honestly, while there was a burn, there was relief that felt so good after they drained. By day 1, lump was half the size, day 2, a quarter of the original size, day 3, gone. It hurt but was nearly nothing compared to the pain I felt. Story 36. Had to scroll a ways to find other replies that wouldn't make mine stand out like a perverted sore thumb. The first time I was well and truly topped in a BDSM scene by someone who knew what they were doing with a flogger. The immediate sharp pain that faded into a sting again and again until it was like rhythmic and almost soothing. Then the pain from the bruises for the days following, so satisfying. Story 37. Childbirth. The pain was severe, and during the birth of my second child, I really thought I was going to die. But hearing my spawns cry for the first time and seeing the people that I had only bonded with through touch for so long, priceless. Now they're teenagers. This is another level of pain. I 100% regret being a teenager to my parents, aunts, uncles, and grandparents. Story 38. One time I was making a bale of hard plastic at a warehouse I was working in. For those who don't know what a bale is, a giant bundle of stuff tied up with wire. Traditionally, you'd see bales of hay like on a farm, but warehouses will often use this method of packaging to deal with certain kinds of trash. As I was grabbing one of the wires to tie it up, the wire whipped around and grazed my arm, leaving tiny, shallow scratch. And for some reason it felt good and I was like, WTF is wrong with me? I immediately took off my gloves and went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and got a drink of water, trying not to think about the why or what of just happened. Went back to work afterwards. Story 39. When I was breastfeeding my oldest, I ended up with a clogged milk duct. The milk was backed up on one part of my breast, causing it to be painfully engorged and at risk of infection. I tried pressing on that spot while feeding her and while pumping milk with the machine, but it wasn't working, and the pain was unbearable. Finally, I got in the shower, heat is supposed to help, and pressed on the painful spot till I felt like I was going to pass out or vomit. I hand-expressed milk and pressed until finally I felt the clog give way. I swear I heard a tick sound like a popping zit as the clog came out. Or maybe it was the milk hitting the far side of the shower stall due to the excessive pressure. I imagine it's somewhat like how passing a kidney stone feels. I was so relieved from the pain and pressure finally dissipating, as well as the worry that it was going to progress to mastitis. Story 40. I've seen pooping and pimple popping multiple times in here already to add to the list of gross stuff. Vomiting. Sometimes when you're so ill it hurts, it can be a huge relief. Whether it's after a night of drinking, or for me when I suffered from chronic sinusitis, the constant drainage and pressure would make me feel so sick I could barely function, and often the best relief was to go hack it up. Story 41. When my ex-boyfriend broke up with me, we were together for 3.5 years, and I had been thinking about breaking up with him. We had been arguing a lot, and it was my last year of college. He was trying to discourage me from going to grad school. I was just nervous about the idea because he was my first boyfriend. When he did it, I was crushed at first. However, I quickly realized it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Nearly 5 years later, I have my master's in social work, and I'm a licensed social worker. Take that, loser. Story 41. I once unknowingly had a tooth infection. It was so unbelievably painful, but I couldn't go to the dentist because of debt. At some point, I thought something stuck between my teeth was causing the pain, but I couldn't even get dental floss in between them because the swelling was pushing them together. Eventually, I took a sewing needle and threaded cotton string between my molars right at the gum line, and I slowly pulled it down until my molars separated and the thread came out the bottom. Felt like I was ripping my teeth out, but instant relief when the string came out. I later found out that my back molars on either side of my upper jaw had abscessed, and the pain I felt was the nerves dying. Story 42. After getting food poisoning and feeling nauseous for hours, I finally stumbled to the bathroom and got sick from both ends. As soon as whatever the fuck my body wanted out was out, it felt almost better than an orgasm, TBH. It was like this layer of relief and contentment rushed over me, and all the tension in my body, even in places I didn't even know were holding tension, released. Would not go through that pain again, obviously, but the sensation afterwards was so oddly good, LOL. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it. Be sure to write comments and share your stories.